as a director, it's a learning curve. So this is quite interesting to go back and have an opportunity to look back at my previous work, because I tend not to do that. I tend to go, that's in the past now, move on and work on new projects. So it's actually quite interesting to look back, take a moment to look back and see what worked and what didn't work on some of your previous movies. So interestingly, the festival is screening my films in reverse order. So Habit is screened first, then White Settlers, and Splintered, which was my first film, screens last. And so it's like going back in time. It's quite interesting. Yeah, it's I guess as you develop, you start to become, and when you develop as a film director, you start to become more aware of what it is you want to say and what it is you want to do. So I think with my first film, Splintered, it was a massive learning curve, and I think I can see some flaws in that movie now. And in fact, we've gone back and done, because one of the editors on the film approached me and said, actually, we can go back to the original footage and we can remaster it, and we can remaster it in like 2K, and we can regrade it, and we can even cut it. So we've actually gone through that process specifically for Hardline Festival. So the version that's screening of Splintered is a kind of new director's cut. It's shorter. I've cut out quite a lot of the film. It's a tighter movie, and hopefully a better movie.
At the time, I didn't really know very much about genre films, I'll be honest. And so for me, it was like, can I do this? Can I get a finance raised and make a movie? And I just wanted to make a movie. And I wasn't necessarily, as a producer, I've learned so much. Because I was so focused on getting the movie made, actually wasn't focusing on exactly what we were making. So lots of lessons to be learned. And for me personally, as I've progressed as a genre producer, I have a great respect and more knowledge of the genre now, and what makes the audiences tick, what they like, what they don't like. I'm running Grimfest as well. For the last 10 years, Simeon and I have been kind of steeped in genre films. So I think we learn an awful lot, and for me as a producer, suddenly from going from Splintered to White Settlers, really focusing a little bit more on making what makes a good genre movie, understanding the audience, and just having that extra bit of knowledge and respect for for our audience.
I think that's a really difficult question, because I don't set out to make particularly British films, I don't think. Certainly with White Settlers, my influences, and also the screenwriter Ian Fenton, we were influenced and inspired by different movies from all around the world. I know that some of his influences when he was writing the script were films like Deliverance and Southern Comfort, and so they're American movies that he was influenced by, but he also wanted to write something that had a political undertone, a subtext to it, which was very British and was about this kind of Scottish-English divide, and was also about a divide between rich and poor. So it is about something which is very British, but I think in terms of what we wanted to do visually and where we wanted to place the audience, we were influenced by movies from all around the world. So I guess it's maybe that melting pot of being inspired by films that we love, which may or may not be British. And then I guess you filter it through your own style and your own taste, and it's impossible not to bring an element of your own culture to whatever you make, I guess. And certainly I think White Settlers is maybe much more of a kind of conventional suspense thriller. And probably in terms of how it functions and the story it tells, could easily have been made in a different country, I think. whereas Habit is much more of a character piece and is very much more, because it's based on a novel and it's set in Manchester, which is our hometown. It has a feeling of the city very much. Out of all of my films, it's the one that I think is probably the most British in its nature and reflects our country and our town in terms of the atmosphere and the vibe. When I read the book that it's based on, I connected with the way it represented the city. I knew that city, that maybe not the darkest places that it goes to, but in certainly this kind of slightly seedy part of the city. And then, of course, the film imagines that there's something very, very dark that goes on beneath the surface. Maybe that does go on in Manchester, I don't know. But and also the book was, all the places in the book are real places in Manchester. So the author was able to take me around and say, this is the actual club that I imagine this goes on in. This is the bar that they go to when this scene happens. And that was great for me, because I got to kind of, feel the thing as almost like it's almost a reality. It's almost a real thing. And so to me, Habit is almost like a kind of a very dark love letter to our own city, Manchester. So it is very British, that film, I guess. And a lot of the references and a lot of the things the characters do and they talk about are very British. And the music in the film, and you can see, there are many references to the city. That if you know Manchester, or you'll get those references. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Somebody described it as Ken Loach meets Dario Argento in terms of its tone. And Ken Loach, I don't know if you know, is a very famous British film director. He's made a lot of social realist movies, and actually, I think that description is. I'm quite happy with that. It's quite nice, because I think that's exactly what the film does. It kind of moves from, it starts off as a drama, and then at a certain point it drops you into this kind of crazy world that you don't see coming, and then suddenly the tone changes, and suddenly the way we present the world and the way we shot the film and lit the film changes in its tone and atmosphere. So very much it's almost like a film of two different styles in a way. It's difficult. It's like, when do you find something that you really want to make? Sometimes it takes lots of time. Sometimes it's very quick. So I would like to be able to make movies more quickly. I'd like the turnaround time between films to be shorter, because I love making films, and I really don't like the time in between when you're trying to raise the finance or you're trying to get your project together. Sometimes it can take ages. Obviously trying to raise finance for low budget movies and for independent films is pretty hard, actually. But it just varies. I mean, I've got two film projects at the moment which we have in development, and I'm hoping that we will get one of those into production. Well, I don't know, maybe before the end of this year, or maybe the start of next year. This year is going quickly, so.
Yeah, it's unlikely, to be fair, that it's going to be the end of this year, but we hope we'll be...
It's the producer speaking.
Yeah, doing something in the early part of next year. For me, I totally agree with Simeon. It's really, really tough to stay sustainable when you're making a movie every 3 years. So I'm kind of working hard on a plan for a slate. We shall see. And
I consider myself to be a director more than a writer. I do like being involved in writing, but I prefer to work with collaborators if I can. I think the creative process of working with other people is a wonderful experience, and I think it helps, because I think if you develop things on your own, I mean, there are some amazing writer-directors out there who are capable of creating fantastic movies, but for me, I like the process of working with somebody else to develop a project. And actually with Habit, I ended up adapting the book myself, so I did write the screenplay, and that process took some time. I'd never adapted a novel before, So I was a little bit nervous about that process and whether I would be able to do it because I'd never done it. But I think it worked okay, and I think that what is nice is the guy that Stephen McGee, who wrote the book that it's based on, really loves the film. So that's a testament to the movie that he liked it, and he doesn't hate it, because you hear a lot of stories about writers whose books have been turned into movies and they hate the movie, and it's not, and they feel it doesn't represent their book and their work. Whereas Stephen, he tells me anyway that he likes the movie. He seems to be very supportive of it, so that's cool. I actually really like to, if possible, to work with people I trust and that I admire. And so I think it's, if I can, I like the idea of, like, I'd love to do a movie with some of the people I've worked with previously and some of the actors I've worked with previously. But it just depends on the project. You know, sometimes it's like you may want to work with a particular actor, but there just isn't the right role for that actor. You know, the ages and the character's ages aren't right or whatever. So, I mean, it's a pretty limited cast in White Settlers. There's really only two main characters in the film, and then you know the other cast are all wearing masks, so you don't know really who they are. So moving on to Habit was a you know, much bigger cast. It's more of a character piece, and that was a different challenge for me to create a movie that was much more about. I mean, it's a drama with horror elements rather than it being a horror movie. And that was a different challenge, and I was also very unsure how it would be perceived once we'd finished the movie, because it's quite different from White Settlers and it's not an obvious kind of horror film. Mm-hmm. And I think some people have really got that and really enjoy that kind of, it's maybe a little different from what you expect. Not everybody is kind of enjoyed that, so you know, it's difficult, but I think you've always got to try as a creative. And as a director, you've always got to try to challenge yourself with new and different stuff.
However, you did work with James Swift's DOP on both movies, so
yes,
maybe not the same cast, but you know, there are
some of the same crew that we've worked with, yeah, over particularly over the last two movies, anyway. But I'd be more than happy to work with a lot of the guys the cast I've worked with on previous films, because. That, you know, I think they're all fantastic, some great actors. And on Habit, I was very lucky. You know, obviously it's the most recent film I made. I was very lucky because I had such a great cast, and many of them were kind of Manchester or Northern actors, Northern UK actors. And it was important to keep. We wanted to make it very much true to the city, and so we didn't really want a lot of actors that weren't from the area. And I was so pleased with the cast. You know, I think I couldn't have wanted for better. And Elliot, James Langridge, who plays Michael, the lead, is a fantastic actor. In fact, he isn't from the north. I actually thought he was, because he was in a movie called Northern Soul, which was about Northern Soul music, and mainly set in the north and Wigan, and set back in the 70s. And he was fantastic in that film. And his performance was so good that I thought he was a northern actor. And it turns out he's not, but his northern accent is spot on. So I was very lucky with Elliot. And Jessica Barden, who plays Lee in the film. Some people may have seen her in a TV series called The End of the Fucking World, which is on Netflix, and she's very, very good as well. So, and then they were surrounded by a bunch of other very, very good actors, very experienced actors that have done a lot of films and certainly a lot of TV. Yeah, it's a great experience. Yeah, it's like we wear two hats, really, don't we? So we see the film thing from two different sides. So at one point we're making movies, and the next minute we're kind of exhibiting movies. And but you know, that's I think it's really fascinating for us because we see so much stuff and we see so many great genre films from all around the world. And so you kind of get a sense of what people are making, what people are excited about. You also get a sense from the audience about what audiences are really looking for and what they get excited about. So that gives you an inside view, which maybe not everybody gets, and that's it's fascinating. But you know, it also keeps you on your toes. It also keeps you kind of like, you know, because you see so many other great movies. It's like, this is some really, really great stuff out there. So you kind of think, I got to up my game to keep up with some of the other stuff that's out there, you know. So every time it's like, right, this movie's got to be better than the last one. You know? We made movies first. I used to be a designer, so I used to be an art director for film and TV, but I always wanted to direct, so I started making short films, and eventually I wanted to make a feature-length film, and that's when I met Rachel. And Rachel was doing like corporates and commercials, working for a company, but she had ambition to make feature films. So I needed a producer because I just, you know, I was trying to figure out how to raise the finance to make this movie. This first one was Splintered, and I wasn't doing too well at that side of the process. And then I met Rachel, and she said, "Well, I actually really want to produce movies." And so I was very lucky. So we got together and eventually managed to get the first film off the ground.
Yeah, I didn't know whether we were going to achieve it. You know, I left my full-time job of directing and producing commercials and corporates, and it was quite a journey, to be fair, you know, not knowing anything about film finance or film distribution, film sales. It was all, you know, a completely new world to me. So Grimm actually came out of shameless self-promotion for Splintered because we didn't have distribution at that point. So we thought, well, we knew other producers that also had low-budget horrors that didn't have distribution. So together with one of the founders of, now founders of Grimmfest, Steve Batshaw, who was he was a festival programmer. And we thought, you know, could this work? You know, could people, you know, put this screening on and maybe people will find out about it? Who knows? And you know, it was supposed to be one day with 3 films. It ended up being 3 days, 27 movies, and Grimm Up North, Grimmfest was born.
Yeah, lots of people came to us and said, "We'd love you to put our movie on." And we're like, "Because you're running a film festival, aren't you?" And we were like, "No, not really. We're just going to do like a film screening. That's all it was, really." And it's like, eventually people kept telling us we're running a film festival. So it's like, okay, we must be running a film festival then. And we didn't know anything about that. We'd never done that before. So, but that's, you know, fast forward 10 years, and now it's 10 years old, Grimmfest. And when we return to the UK, we go straight into the festival, this year's festival.
You literally get off the plane and go to the first screening. So it's a little bit tight.
Yeah. It's a great honour to be here at Hardline. You know, it's fantastic. I've got a retrospective of my work here, which is, you know, it's a fantastic thing to have. So all my 3 feature films are screening, and I was quite surprised when I was asked if I wanted to do this, but a pleasant surprise, and it's been great to be here. And it's a great festival, a great town.
It's a beautiful city, and in terms of the festival, we know how festivals work, and I think Hardline are doing an absolutely fantastic job. They're 6 years old, and it's working like clockwork, so I think they're doing a great job.